I have tracked for the Kolveth line for 11 seasons, and I had never once heard my huntmaster ask for silence before a release. He asked for it that morning, in the long grass at the edge of the ash grove enclosure, while the 5 specimens stood blinking in the cold light with their recording rigs still strapped to their chests. "Quiet," Draeth Kolveth said, and the beaters lowered their poles, and even the enclosure's birds seemed to take the instruction. He walked the line of them slowly, hands clasped behind the small of his back, the way he walked a trophy hall. 4 of them flinched when his shadow crossed them. The 5th did not. She was the smallest of the group, dark-haired, unremarkable in the way a good tool is unremarkable. On the crossing transport, before we corrected their course into the enclosure, she had been the one on their broadcast feed, telling jokes to a camera, calling herself the expedition's safety consultant, in a tone that suggested even she thought the title was decorative. Draeth had watched 3 minutes of that footage and made his decision on the strength of it. Harmless. Decorative. The kind of specimen a hunting license broker throws in as a courtesy, when the real cargo, the Deathworld classification, the reason any of this is legal on our side of the border, is a species everyone already respects. He should have watched a 4th minute. "This one," Draeth said, and put 2 fingers under her chin, the way you'd tilt a bird's head to check its eyes. "Bring me the quiet one for the opening chase. The others can run for the cameras. She'll make a better closing trophy. She isn't wasting energy being afraid." I logged it as instructed. Ren Castile, the manifest called her. Human, adult female, no visible weapon, cooperative under restraint. I did not think, at the time, that cooperative and unresisting were the same word. I know better now. The enclosure runs 11 kilometers of engineered forest, planted Deathworld flora under our own daylight rigs, corridors cut to funnel prey toward the viewing platforms, where Draeth's guests would drink and applaud. My work was simple. Walk 20 meters behind the release point, mark the specimen's headings, radio positions to the platform. I had done it 11 seasons running. I did not expect to learn anything. The other 4 ran the way. Frightened things run, which is to say badly, loudly, toward whichever tree line looked darkest. Ren did not run. She walked the group into a drainage cut within the first 4 minutes, got them below the sight lines, and then did something I have turned over in my mind since. She counted. Not her companions, the enclosure. She stood still at the mouth of the cut and counted the beaters' calls, timing the interval between them, reading the pattern the way I read a fence line for weak posts. By the 9th minute she had the rotation. By the 12th she had moved her 4 companions, one at a time, along the blind seam between 2 beater sweeps that I did not know existed until she used it. I had walked that ground for 11 seasons. She had walked it for 12 minutes. Draeth, on the platform, found this delightful. "She's making it interesting," he told his guests, and raised his glass. And I remember thinking that a woman evading a hunting party without once raising her voice or her pace was not making anything interesting. She was doing arithmetic. The interesting part, I understood only later, was that Draeth had mistaken competence for performance a 2nd time. At the 18th minute he grew bored of interesting, and ordered the closing sweep, full beater line, my position folded in from the flank, the platform's own guns brought down for the kill shot photograph. "Bring me the quiet one," he said again, over the comm, and there was real pleasure in it. He wanted to be the one holding the tilt this time, not 2 fingers under a chin, but a rifle stock against his shoulder, guests watching. I found her first. She was kneeling at the edge of a game clearing, unhurried, her 4 companions arranged behind her in the drainage cut she'd used the whole run, out of sight line, out of the beater pattern she'd mapped. She was not hiding. She was waiting, the way you wait for a kettle, with a length of snare cable from her guide kit, looped once around her fist, and the rest of it coiled at her feet, like she'd had time to spare, and had used it on this instead of running further. I should have called it in immediately. I did not. I have asked myself why, 11 seasons of loyal service later, I did not simply speak into the calm and end the question before Draeth arrived to answer it himself. The truth is that some part of my tracker's training, the part that reads sign, not surface, had already understood what my huntmaster had not, and I wanted, once, to see whether I was right. Draeth came through the tree line at a jog, rifle low but ready, 3 guests behind him with their own weapons and their drinks left up on the platform rail. He saw her kneeling and slowed to a walk, savoring it, the tilt of the chin already forming again in his mind. There she is, he said. Not to her. To us. To the audience he had built this whole enclosure to feed. She looked up at him without fear and without defiance, which are the 2 expressions the enclosure is built to record, and gave him neither. You should have watched the 4th minute, she said. And I did not understand her until much later, when I pulled the crossing transport's footage myself and found the segment Draeth had cut short. Her, off camera, walking a supply line, checking sight lines out of habit, moving like someone counting exits in every room she has ever stood in. Draeth raised the rifle. He was still smiling when he did it, unhurried, certain of the shape the next 4 seconds would take. He was wrong about the shape. She did not run, and did not flinch, and did not raise a weapon of her own, because she did not need one. The snare cable left her hand before his finger had finished its first ounce of pressure on the trigger, caught the barrel at the muzzle in a loop she had clearly tied 1,000 times before this morning, and she stepped inside his reach the same motion, not fast in the way a frightened animal is fast, but exact, the way water finds the one gap in a dam. The rifle went one direction. Draeth went another, onto the ground, cable still twisted through the trigger guard, and by the time his guests had processed that the tableau on the platform's monitors no longer matched the tableau in front of them, it was already finished. She had not raised her voice once. She had not raised her voice at any point in the 18 minutes I had watched her. She stood over him for a moment, not gloating, not even looking at him particularly, more like a technician confirming a reading, then crouched, checked that he was breathing, and walked back toward the drainage cut to collect her 4 companions, who had not moved and had not needed to. The guests did not applaud. I do not think any of them understood, in that moment, that they had watched a correction rather than a hunt. I filed the incident report myself, before Draeth's staff could file theirs. Under classification I wrote what the manifest should have said from the start, and what our own registry now confirms. Cross-checked against the crossing transport's uncut footage. Earth is not a courtesy addition to any license. It is Class 8, unbrokered, and every specimen taken from it is taken in violation of law that exists precisely because someone, a long time ago, filed a report exactly like mine. Ren Castile did not press charges, did not demand an audience, did not ask the enclosure's board for anything beyond transport home for herself and the 4 people she had spent 18 minutes keeping alive without once telling them she was doing it. When I offered, on the tarmac, to log a formal statement in her name, she only asked that I spell her companions' names correctly, since they were the ones who would want the record straight. I have tracked for the Colveth line for 11 seasons. I put in for reassignment 3 days after the incident, and it was granted without question, because by then, the registry had already reclassified the entire enclosure, and no one wanted their name attached to the file. I keep my copy of her uncut footage still. Not the chase, which anyone can watch, but the 4th minute Draeth never got to. A woman walking a hallway, checking exits, counting doors, because that is simply what she does when she thinks no one is recording.